Ooh, what's up, Internet? My name's Nerdy, and this is the Nerdy, the Wordy, the Book Club. That's right, we are live back on this channel after taking last week off unceremoniously to talk about Percy Jackson 5, the last Olympian, the finale of the original Percy Jackson series. And I'm excited to sit here and talk with you all. Thank you all for being here live this morning. We did not cover Game Changer last week. Sorry about that. That's all I'm going to say about that. Blue says, are we supposed to read the books before book club? Blue, have you also not read the Percy Jacksons? Yeah, if you did not check out the video on the roleplay relay, I did have my craziest card pull ever. I had my many $100 moment over there. The card is not close enough that I can show it to you now, but everyone else has to read the book except Blue. Clarice, I know you have not read the book, so I don't even want to hear it from you. I don't even want to hear it from you. All right, y'all. Let's talk about Percy Jackson, the last Olympian. This is my review for the book. It's my review. It's nobody else's review. And just because I say things in this review does not mean that you have to feel them, does not mean that you have to agree with them, and they do not mean that you have to change your opinions of the book, because I know that this book is beloved, and this series is beloved. And I don't want to sit here and make you think that because I have opinions, that you have to change your opinions, okay? I want to get that out first. I am a little bit confused. I'm a little bit confused about the love for this book in this franchise. And it's not that it's bad, okay? This book isn't terrible. It is less of a book and more of a series of Deus Ex Machinas of characters you've met in other books just kind of showing up to be present in the finale. And Percy Jackson is just sort of present for a series of events happening in New York City around the idea that they're in a battle that he doesn't have that much to do with, to be honest. And he doesn't precipitate much of the action in the book. But we should get into what the book is. Percy Jackson, the Last Olympian, takes place a little bit after the last book, The Battle for the Labyrinth. Percy Jackson is part of a strike team with a young man who unfortunately passes in the mission. Oh my god, what is his name? As soon as I have to talk about it, I'm blanking on him. Percy Jackson. I need to just pull up like a fucking chapter summary. But they are trying to take down the cruise ship that is the Princess Andromeda, the Charles Beckendorf. God damn. So Percy and Charles go on a mission to take out a cruise ship. Charles dies. It's very sad. Honestly, I really liked the opening decision to have a friend and like compatriot die early in this novel. I think that it was a nice way to make the book feel like it was trying to grow up. It's not, which is kind of the biggest problem with the Percy Jackson series as a whole, is that Percy Jackson is still 12 years old. Percy Jackson is written for 12-year-olds, and so the fact that he is now 16 is not apparent in the books. These characters have not grown up at all from where they were in book one. And they've changed. Like, the experience of the books has changed them, but they are not older kids yet. They're not in any sort of teenage phase. They're all 12. And that nothing makes that more apparent than like the way in which Annabeth is just absolutely ruined by the final two books of this series and goes from being like one of the more interesting characters in the first three books to being just an absolute drag in the last two, because Rick Riordan can only write women one way apparently, which is that they're all just kind of mean and jealous. And I'm not like blaming like the character Annabeth. Like I am like looking at Rick Riordan and being like, why are the women in these books all just sort of rough, and like why are they all defined by jealousy? Right? It's so fascinating how there are so many. I mean, I guess like Rachel Dare kind of isn't defined by jealousy. She's maybe the only one. And it's because I don't think Rick Riordan knew how to get out of the love triangle easily. And so she had to just be like, no, Percy, you were always meant to be with Annabeth, and I was meant to be the Oracle. And so we don't have to do sort of the like complicated stuff of the fact that we have feelings for each other. But like Annabeth in the last two books is just jealousy to the point that it becomes absurd. Rachel at the end of book 4 really helps them. Like, really shows up and helps them survive the battle for the labyrinth. Really does her part to become... To get some grace from Annabeth that Annabeth never shows her. Annabeth, this whole book, is just sort of like, Percy, I'm going to fight by your side, but I am mad at you about that mortal girl who's nice to you when I am mean to you all the time, but I want you to like it. It's very confusing. We meet Persephone. We go to hell. We meet Persephone. Persephone is like so jealous that she doesn't even want to talk about Nico's mom, even though Nico's in the room, and Nico's mom is so relevant to the plot of the book. But the reason why we can't talk about the plot of the book is because Persephone is just a crazy jealous woman. And I understand the concept that like we're talking about these Greek gods who cheat on their wives all the time, and Greek, women who cheat on their husbands all the time. And I do understand the idea that jealousy exists within all of these relationships, but none of the men are defined by their jealousy the way the women all are defined by jealousy. And it really hurts the book for me. It drags it down quite a bit, the way the women are treated. But anyway, so Beckendorf and Percy go and they blow up the cruise ship. This has no impact on the later plot of the book other than Beckendorf is dead. But like, it is a sad and like it's a very impactful. It's honestly the best part of the book in my opinion. It's the best written part of the book. Percy coming back to camp, other than the fact that again the Percy coming back to camp emotional stuff is a little bit ruined by Annabeth being jealous and weird towards him about Rachel when like he just lost a friend, and you're like, Annabeth, Beckendorf just died. Like, what? Who fucking cares about Rachel right now? Beckendorf died, and then Percy immediately finds out that the prophecy is like, hey Percy, you're gonna die in a week. You're gonna die in a week, brother. And Annabeth is like, I can't believe you're talking about mortal girl. And Percy's like, Beckendorf just died. I'm gonna be dead in like 7 days. Is this really how we want to spend our time? And I do find that to be kind of wild. We then start the side quest to get the Curse of Achilles. We want to go to hell and get the Curse of Achilles because Nico D'Angelo is like, I've got a plan. I'm not gonna lie, I really wish the Curse of Achilles thing had been foreshadowed in a previous book at all, and I wish it mattered more in this book. I feel like it allows Percy to have some really cool like he kills like the entirety of Hades' minions. And then once they get to New York, he has the Curse of Achilles, but he's not like wiping out all of Hades' minions anymore, or all of Kronos' minions in the same way that he did with Hades' minions. And it just like the idea of the Curse of Achilles in this book is really cool, right? And it does lead to moments that are great, with Annabeth kind of naturally defending his weak spot, as if she just kind of knows him, with the concept of like Ethan Nakamura figuring it out somehow, but not engaging with the Kronos, who he's on the side of, and like what he thinks he's figured out. I didn't really know. I couldn't figure out how Ethan knew where it was, but it doesn't matter. I guess he just saw Annabeth defend that spot and then assumed that... The Curse of Achilles stuff it didn't end up mattering enough to me. Percy feels mostly like Percy Jackson for a lot of the fighting once we get to New York. And that is kind of the problem with the book, is there is this element of Percy becomes in this invulnerable fight god, and then needs to be saved repeatedly by Deus Ex Machinas, by Chiron showing up with the party ponies, uh, by that says Ethan didn't know it was Lucky Strike. I mean, the Chronos spends a significant chunk of the book being like, Ethan, you figured out where his weak spot was. Tell me. If you tell me where his weak spot was, Ethan, I will give you the greatest reward ever given to a demigod when we win. So I don't know that I totally agree with you. I think Ethan did figure it out. So we go to Hades. Hades is like, hey, I'm actually just gonna lock you up. And then we just kind of break out real easily. And then we go get the Curse of Achilles. We beat up Hades' minions. We go to New York. We start fighting in New York. A bunch of Deus Ex Machinas happen. We go up to Olympus. We fight Kronos. We beat Kronos. It's really not that hard. And then the book kind of ends. And we start dating Annabeth in the final chapters. And it's such a fascinating novel in the way that it's structured, right? In the sense that it is really just this big battle, most of which has not been foreshadowed by anything that like Percy experiences. It's a lot of stuff that I think happens inside novels. Like if you told me that there are a series of other books between book 4 and book 5 that explain where all of the shit that matters in book 5 comes from, I would 100% believe you, right? Clarissa is all of a sudden really annoyed with other cabins for not liking Ares enough. And so she's like, we have this flying chariot, but I think it's the Hermes kids have it. And Clarissa's like, we should have it. And they're like, well, no, it's like it's their like parents' thing. And Clarissa is like, okay, well, I don't care. We're not going to come fight with you. I don't know. Percy has nothing to do with this. This is like a fight for a carriage that happened off screen that is for some reason stopping Clarissa and the other Ares kids from joining the battle for the world. She's like, no. We're not going to fight to save our home. We're going to watch you all die. And then we'll probably die because you failed because of a carriage that really matters. And then Selena, who's like kind of in the book, but isn't, but is like really close with Clarice. I keep calling her Clarissa because Clarissa explains it all. Clarice, does show up at the end of the book and like does do her Deus Ex Machina, and it has not a fucking thing to do with Percy. It just is like, it literally is like there is another book running in the background of this book where characters are running around manipulating Deus Ex Machinas for them to happen for Percy. Percy does manage to convince his dad, Poseidon. He sits in his dad's throne and his dad's a pissy little bitch about it. And he does convince his dad to come help fight Typhon, which does work because the problem with the Typhon fight was just that they just needed Poseidon, apparently. 10 gods couldn't take down Typhon, but Poseidon and 30-foot tall Tyson, because he's 30 feet tall for some reason now. Wise Eyes, thank you for joining the Nerds Radiant. Arzu says, a lot of this stuff is supposed to mirror real legends and myths in a fun way, so that's a background book. Here, okay, I understand what you're saying, Arzu. I do understand what you're saying. But if the goal of this book is to get people to go read the myths and legends, I think that this book should be stronger. And not be like, if you read this book and you're a little bit confused why all these random sort of characters are popping in, go read once you go read this other book, come back to this book, and this book will be better, right? And I understand the idea that Rick Riordan is like, oh, like Achilles is a Greek thing, so I'll just put that in the book. But it ultimately doesn't matter. Like the getting the Achilles power, to me, did not feel like it fundamentally changed how Percy engaged in the combat. It feels like Percy would have done a lot of the same things without the Achilles power, except maybe on the bridge. But even on the bridge, like Percy still has water powers. You know what I mean? Like there's because this book doesn't have sort of the quest arc, it is mostly just combat in the city, right? That's like 60% of the novel is just a big battle in New York City. Percy doesn't engage in moving the plot forward very often in this book. He is engaged in that by like so many magical devices that it actually becomes kind of like comical at a certain point in a way that I didn't enjoy. Like, I started to laugh at the fact that important information is just given to Percy in dreams every time he falls asleep. Percy falls asleep and then has like 6 subsequent dreams where he gets to go to like 6 different people and have the important information of the book just like told to him. And then he wakes up and he's like, guys, we don't need Rachel Dare's prophecy stuff. I actually just dream relevant information. In a way that like was in the first 3 books, but in the last 2 is so overused. It's like, I don't know. It's very strange. Arzu, thank you for 5 gifted memberships. I really appreciate that. Thank you for the membos. People, there are going to be audiobook reactions coming up. We're going to be doing some for The Expanse Book 4 next week. And then we're going to be covering Cradle Book 2 the week after. I know there's a bunch of commissions for that. So enjoy those from Arzu, as well as Dungeon Crawler Carl in a bit here. I think that the central relationship of the the central relationship of this book obviously is Percy and Annabeth. The secondary relationship underneath that really is Annabeth and Luke. And while I think that the delivery mechanism of the information Percy gets is weak, and Percy just sort of having dreams of the past, present, future, like Percy just kind of is the oracle in this book. I actually really quite liked the engaging in... I'm going to come back to this because Hippo Blue said something interesting. I enjoy this book while I'm reading it, but honestly, I don't recall much of it. I totally understand why. I understand that, right? This book is very enjoyable because it is just a lot of easy information and hype moments. It doesn't challenge Percy very much. It is just sort of like, there's a pig problem. Here's how we deal with the pig problem. Here's oh my god, there's a dragon. Clarice is here. Clarice, stop the dragon. It is just sort of a series of moments where every background character sort of gets their moment. But those moments don't sort of have an arc because they don't really tie to each other. A lot of the Battle of New York City doesn't, like, this beat doesn't lead to this beat, doesn't lead to this beat, doesn't lead to this beat. The statues come to life. That ultimately is such an insane idea. The idea that at some point, oh my god, what's his fucking name? The guy, the not Hephaestus. It's the guy who made the labyrinth. He replaced every statue in New York City with fucking robots. Sure. Yeah, Deadless replaced every statue in New York City with a robot. When? I don't know. I always like it when statues come to life and things. No idea, it just makes me happy. I agree with that. It makes me happy too. Here's the thing. I don't hate the fact that he replaced statues in New York City with robots. But again, it just felt like it felt fun, but not of consequence. And that's what I think that's why this whole book to me falls mostly flat, is that it is this like big finale. Watch some Doctor Who and you won't be happy anymore. Why won't I be happy anymore if I watch Doctor Who? There's many great episodes of Doctor Who. This book is so... The idea of this book is so fun. And a lot of it is very fun. And I wanted it to be more of consequence. But going back to what I said about... like, this is a coming-of-age story that never comes of age. Oh, you're talking about the Weeping Angels? Yeah. this is a coming of age story that never comes of age. Percy never becomes 16. Percy never like takes on the mantle of leadership in the way that I felt like he learned from his adventures, right? He just sort of has to be the leader, and so he is. And despite the fact that Percy is the like New Yorker who loves New York, Percy's love and knowledge of New York never comes into play in terms of like the way they defend the city, right? He even forgets about one of the entrances into Manhattan at one point. I wanted the book to feel more of consequence for a finale. And I wanted the kids to feel a little bit older. I want them to feel like 16. And they still feel 12. But the one who doesn't is Luke, right? We get to go on like this memory road down Luke's past and like why Luke is the way that he is, how Luke's mom became the Oracle. And a lot of that stuff is actually really great. And it leads to one of my favorite God conversations, which is Percy and Hermes at the very end, when Hermes kind of talks to Percy about how difficult it was to be knowledgeable about Luke's future but not be able to say anything to him. And I loved the concept that the limitation on the gods in this world is actually the way in which they have to interact with fate, because they have the power to stop things. But their actions, if they stop the things they know are coming, they will make them worse. And, you know, this is kind of tied into Zeus killing Nico D'Angelo's mom when he blows up the hotel. Zeus blowing up a hotel was not something I expected. It just wasn't something I expected. That was crazy. Truly nuts. It just, he's so evil, and there's no consequences for him at the end of the book. But it is what it is. I don't know. One of the weird things about this book is it never tries to make an argument that the gods are good or worthwhile, right? So like the entire fight with Kronos, Percy's like, I'm choosing the god side, I guess, but like I don't really want to. And every demigod that goes over to the bad, to Kronos' side, is justified because the gods are bad. And I've never read a book where the heroes are just fighting for such a morally lackadaisical side. And don't get me wrong, Kronos is worse. It's just very funny to me that this book never really tries to make the argument that Zeus and his team are worth it, or that they make life better for anybody. The gods don't improve life for anyone. They are just the problem. And I think we could have seen more moments in these books of the gods interacting with the world to make things better, and we just kind of never do. They're just kind of the worst. So I do find that part of it fascinating. The Oracle deserved to get cursed. I would have cursed her. I don't know that... Here's the thing, Marys. I don't think it's the Oracle's fault. Right? Like, I think that... I don't think the Oracle controls when she gets visions. And so blaming her for being the vessel... It's literally shooting the messenger of fate and being like, well, it's your fault that you said something that you don't have control over. Like... Even at the end of this book, when Rachel Dare says the vision at the end of the book, she doesn't, like, remember it, right? She doesn't engage in being the Oracle in any, like, real way. In any way that she has control over. So I think to blame her for a situation she cannot control is difficult. No, I mean how she rolled up to Hades while he was holding his dead lover. Yeah, that is confusing. I like, how did she get there? She can't fly. Like, she walked to Manhattan and climbed up a hotel after it been blown up by Zeus. I agree with you. I didn't really understand why she showed up. Unless she can teleport. Death says, I am Brazilian. I don't know if it makes sense, but I saw a short saying that the way Percy divided the cabin on the bridges shows his knowledge of New York. What's your opinion? I understand the idea that, like, oh, Percy divides the cabins up to different places in New York. I don't really know that I understand tactically what his thinking was. He did divide people to places into the city, but I feel like you could reasonably do that if you had a map, right? Like, I wanted him to engage in something a little bit more, like, deeper knowledge of New York that living there would give you. Like, the fact that they could have been, like, using the subway tunnels to move things around, or like something that would make it feel like they were in New York City. He just kind of keeps throwing out locations in New York in terms of, like, talking about it. But it is kind of, the map of New York as the fight plays out does get a little bit confusing. At one point, Percy flies a flying pig from Grand Central Station, or from Central Park, somewhere in Central Park, to Grand Central Station. And I couldn't quite figure out how they ended up there. Other than the fact that it's like, oh, it's Grand Central Station. Like, we kind of need to name famous places in New York City. And it did kind of I did sort of get the vibe sometimes of, like, oh, we're doing, like, famous spots. He goes all the way down to Battery Park at one point to talk to the Rivers. And then he, like, flies. He's bouncing all the way around Manhattan. It, like, I would love for someone to put together a map of the Percy Jackson's travels in this book around the city. And he can fly. So, like, because Blackjack can fly, it's not actually that crazy. It isn't. Like, it's not that nuts. And it is fun. Again, it's fun. It's tough. I feel bad for not liking this book more because it's so fun, right? Because it is a blast. And I genuinely think if Annabeth were treated better by the writing of the book, and if Percy felt a little bit older, I would have fewer complaints. Like, the book around the main characters is fun enough that a lot of what I struggle with the book is the fact that the main characters don't feel like they're taking it seriously, or they're old, or they're as old as they say they are. And so all of these fun things are happening, and the main characters we keep coming back to are just dreaming relevant information and just kind of showing up and fighting, and then being, like, really snippy with each other about dating, even though Annabeth this whole book thinks Percy's gonna die. Like, Annabeth has spent the last 4 years knowing this boy with the knowledge that on his 16th birthday he dies. And so the way she treats him just feels extra weird, because she's the whole time is like, he's like 3 days from death. And maybe that's why she's acting the way that she is, right? Like, maybe she's being maybe like him being close to death is causing her to be more jealous and more, like, pissy with Rachel, even though, like, it just drives me crazy. Rachel really helped you out, girl. Your quest was book 4, and you would have failed miserably without that girl. And she showed up, she put her life on the line for you, and you're just awful to her, even though you know she has superpowers. Like, you know the girl has Greek-related superpowers, and that she, like, has to be here. And you're just so pissy about it because you want to date Percy, but you won't communicate with Percy at all, except in being mean to him. And so you're just rude to this girl who literally, like, almost dies crashing a helicopter into New York to get you guys information that you need to save the day. I feel like the last 3 of these books are Nerdy saying, I like this, but focusing 3/4 of the time on stuff he didn't like. I think that's fair. It gets exhausting. I'm sorry, Animal Friend. I'm not trying to be exhausting. I'm trying to, like, really share my opinions. And if you don't like my opinions, I think that's an entirely valid point of view. I want to get back to the thing I like. I like Luke. I think that I think more so than Percy, I think Luke is the better part of this book, weirdly. And it's because there's a real arc to the backstory of Luke leading up to his final moments with Kronos. Erudite says, you think we're here for your opinions? I don't know what else you're here for. Claris isn't here. It's just me talking for who knows how long. Luke is the reframing of Luke's backstory as being really, we start by meeting his mom, right? We go and we meet his mom, and his mom is in a bad way, right? She can't clean up. She's not aware that she has a mess. Like, she's become a hoarder, but she doesn't see it. She keeps burning cookies over and over again. She doesn't have the wherewithal to really like engage in her own life anymore. And she has been destroyed by Hades' curse, right? Hades' curse towards that was intended to like, I think intended to harm Zeus, harms this woman and Hermes, I would argue, the most, right? And we get to go see her before we go to hell, before we go and get the Curse of Achilles. And it's a rough scene. Like, it's a difficult read in that it felt very real to me in making me understand why Luke would run away. And why he would blame the gods for so much after that, right? Why he would be so intent on his deep hatred of his father for leaving his mom in this position. And it is that kind of thing where, like, the gods have power. They have people. The fact that Hermes doesn't at least have a fucking satyr go and, like, a paid job to go clean up the apartment and kind of, like, tidy around this woman is shocking to me. You would think that in a world where there are just services where you can pay someone to go take care of somebody, that the gods would do that, but they don't, right? And that's not a critique of the book, animal friend. I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I'm saying it's a way in which Rick Riordan is writing that the gods do not engage in the human beings, that even the ones they care about, that seriously, right? Hermes says that he loves this woman, but his version of love lives on this grand timeline that doesn't really take care of her in a human lifespan, right? And so he doesn't think to, like, have someone show up every week and just clean up her house. And Erudite says the laws around the gods' non-intervention do end up feeling like plot conveniences. What? In Percy Jackson? No, there's no plot conveniences in these books. Arzu says, I like how Luke ended up being the hero named in the prophecy. Yeah, I like that. But I like it. I only like that genuinely because the Percy's, like, demands at the end demand so much of the gods to change. And if I would hate the Luke is the hero in the prophecy thing if the ending of the book was different, right? Because the Luke isn't really the hero. He's not a hero at all. He harms so many people. Selena Beauregard, also not a hero. The book tries to do like, she did the right thing at the end, but, like, also her boyfriend died because of her actions. Beckendorf is dead because of Selena. The book tries to pretend that, like, oh my god, she was just so misinformed. She reports to the bad guys about her own boyfriend's attack on their cruise ship. I'm sorry, she's not a fucking hero. It's so sad. Arzu, it is so sad. But, like, that's a decision she made. You know what I mean? And yes, she leads the Ares campers back into war at the end, but how many fucking heroes are dead because of her? It's not just Beckendorf, right? She was a foolish girl. I refuse. I absolutely refuse that. I refuse the idea that if girls fuck up, we soften it. If a guy fucks up, we wouldn't soften it the same way. She made decisions, and those decisions got her boyfriend killed. She betrayed her friends, and she knew she was doing it, and she allowed... And look, I'm not saying that she wasn't manipulated by Luke. She was manipulated. But she still went on with it, right? She still continued to be the spy after Beckendorf was dead, right? Like, you have to take responsibility for your actions. If a guy did this, I would call him equally foolish. That's fair. That's fair. I get a little nervous about that language, Arzu, because sometimes people will act as if, like, female characters in these books, or in books like this, are somehow easier to manipulate. And I just don't agree with that idea. I fundamentally do not believe that women are easier to manipulate. And a lot of fantasy, partially because it's written by white men, typically, does treat women like they are easier to manipulate, right? It does sort of... There is a tendency in, like, Western fantasy to treat women like they're falling for the bad guy's plot is less on them than if a man does it, because men like to be bad. And I do try and push back on that kind of language in the way that I talk about these books, because I do want to say that, like, Selena is responsible for her actions. And the fact that Clarice is sad that she did those things does not change the fact that Selena is responsible for those actions. You are responsible for being manipulated. You are. Like that is just... that is something that we gloss over. Is that it is actually your job as an individual to take responsibility for being manipulated. And she kind of does, right? Like, she leads a bunch of kids into war. And the way that she takes responsibility, she does get the Ares kids to go to war, which is, a version of trying to make up for it, and I do understand that. But the immediate retcon after her death of everyone being like, fuck, well, we're just gonna say she was a hero. She's going to Elysium. That bitch ain't going to Elysium. You sending your own boyfriend to his death does not get you the fields of Elysium. Darth Vader does not go to heaven because he killed Palpatine at the end. He murdered 30 children. If nothing else, she was actively betraying her boyfriend, so she has to at least know that was wrong. Yeah. Oh, 1,000%. Yeah, she like, it would be one thing if she was giving them some messages, but not everything. But for her to report to Luke about the secret mission her own boyfriend is going on, information that she probably only had because she was his girlfriend, right? I don't think that, like, Percy and Beckendorf probably didn't tell that many people they were going to go attack the cruise ship. And so she had privileged information because of her relationship with Beckendorf, the man she was dating. And so he died. Like, considering some of the stuff real heroes in Greek mythology did and still went to Elysium, I think her odds are decent. Oh, that's interesting. That's interesting. Yeah. I guess the limitations on going to Elysium maybe aren't actually that high. Calibre says, I wish we got to know Charlie more before he died. Also love the Nico and Hades scene. Honestly, he was the MVP of this war. I mean, Nico's great. I don't think I would consider him the MVP. Who would I consider the MVP of this war? I mean, Tyson's got to be up there. Tyson can apparently be 30 feet tall, but Tyson also, like, has been a Cyclops for, like, a year and is the leader. That was pretty sick. I also thought Tyson was going to, like, be a little bit smarter at the end because he had grown so much, but then he shrinks back down and just wants a stick. So I don't know about that. I want to know what the best stick is. Like, what stick does Tyson end up with at the end? Yeah. Arzu says heroes and myths were judged by how much they helped the gods, not what mortals thought of their deeds. Oh, for sure, but Selena betrayed the gods to Kronos mostly. You know what I mean, Arzu? Like, I totally understand your argument that like it's about how much you help the gods, but the gods are like, wait, like Hephaestus is like, wait, my son is dead because that woman was a spy for Kronos. I don't know that that leads to. I don't know that necessarily leads to like Elysium. I don't know how forgiving the gods are. Tyson is a nepotism cyclops. Yeah, Hades on the chariot was great. Hey, Hades, honestly, Hades has a lot of my favorite stuff in this book. When Percy goes down to Hades, like I said, I don't think this book is very good as a whole. Like, I think that as a whole, it's kind of a mess. But there's so many individual moments that on their own are good. If Rick Riordan had done a better job tying the individual moments together into like something that more resembled an arc, I think this whole book would be a lot stronger. But he did sort of write a book of events that sometimes feel like they're just kind of there because like this is the next fun thing. Hades is great. Hades in his throne room being like, I think I'm going to lock you up so that the prophecy just can't happen is hilarious to me. Because Percy still turns 16 in his dungeon. Like, I was like, okay. The way gods view how these things work is just the gods are always very funny in a way that is always so petty and small. And the gods are so petty and small. I do wish they had more moments where they weren't, so that I felt like I wanted them to win. There were large stretches of this book where I was like, I don't know if I want the gods to win. What if we allowed Kronos to kill the gods, and then we killed Kronos, and we just kind of got rid of gods in general, and then we just moved on without them. That sounds like the better ending to this book. We can set up an experiment with 10 dogs and 10 different kinds of stick. Oh, to find the best stick. That's pretty solid. All the heroes of the Trojan War were shitheads. They all still end up in Elysium by Greek's conception. Yeah. Yeah. That is true. I guess it doesn't really matter, right? I guess what you but that gets frustrating for me for these books. Like, if what you do throughout your life doesn't matter, it's just what your last act was. That's such a depressing view of morality and like value. And I think we get so hung up on that because of Star Wars. Like, genuinely, I think that the death of Darth Vader has retroactively created this idea that as long as you die doing something heroic, your actions leading up to that point don't matter. And I just so fundamentally disagree with that. I don't think doing the right thing in a moment of need supersedes the way you treat people when on a normal day. Right? Like, the way you approach every single day is who you are. How you approach a moment of need is adrenaline. And I think we sometimes get so hung up on like, this person did an amazing thing because they had to. And then we find out like, oh, but like in their day-to-day, they're not a good person. And it's like, well, yeah, like they had to do that because it was the someone pulled a gun. Just because someone like stops someone from like shooting people doesn't mean that they're a good person. Arzu says, but if the last act doesn't matter, then far more people would not believe in redemption. But my point is that I don't think you do believe in redemption if you think that it comes from the last act. I think that you are coddling yourself and believing in a idea of redemption that's easy so that you don't have to try very hard to be a good person, right? I think that the version of the last act of redemption, which is what Luke gets, right? Luke is not a hero. Luke is a piece of shit for most of these books. The idea Luke doesn't get redeemed. They decide to treat him like he's redeemed, but he isn't. He killed so many people. Like thousands and thousands and thousands of, probably hundreds of thousands of people die. And the books act as if the way in which Luke is responsible for Typhon being released and destroying the middle of America is somehow like okay, because at the end he stopped Kronos. But like they murdered so many innocent human beings with the fucking series of earthquakes, tidal waves, tornadoes, and all the bullshit that rampaged across the country. And I understand that the book doesn't want to engage in that because the level of loss that we would have to talk about would be insane. Like it would just be fucking nuts. But there is a level of loss of life in this book that is directly attributable to Luke's actions that is just nuts. That they're like, oh, Luke really was a hero for 4 seconds right at the end. And it's like, and 100,000 children in America are dead. So there's that. Also the ship, yeah. I think that the change of heart mind is the point. It's about that rather than the actions. I agree with that. And I do think a change of heart mind is important. I just think that because of the way we write literature and fiction, I think that we get too hung up on the change of heart being redeeming. And we've had this conversation on book club before. I can't remember where, but we've had this debate before, chat. Like redemption comes from the act of making things right with people. And it does mean that some things you cannot be redeemed from, right? There's just a reality to the fact that there are some things that come with no redemption. Your actions have harmed too many people and you can never make it right with anyone. Dalinar cannot be redeemed for his actions, right? He just has to live with them. Thank you, Arzo. Yeah, I appreciate that. Let's not bring that up because I don't want to get into spoilers for Stormlight. But the idea that Luke is a hero because in 5 seconds at the end of his life, he did the right thing while staring at a girl he loved is just so detached from the fact that a Titan destroyed hundreds of thousands of lives crossing the United States, and that is his fault, right? Practically Incarnate says, it's very Christian point of view. As long as you genuinely ask forgiveness, you can be forgiven. Sure. You can be forgiven, but forgiveness is given. Redemption is earned. And oftentimes the Christian concept of forgiveness is confused because Christians believe that a priest or someone, a pastor, can accept your forgiveness on behalf of God so that you don't need to get forgiveness from the person you harmed. And I think it's one of the reasons why Christianity struggles so much with abusive relationships of men really mistreating their wives and the women staying with them, is because of the way that the Christians believe that as long as God accepts the forgiveness, it doesn't actually matter if the woman does, right? And so you have sort of the church becoming this defensive barrier between an abusive relationship and the abused party getting out, because their belief in God is like, well, God is forgiving him, so I need to stay with him because God has forgiven him. My pastor says that. And it is, that's just one example, but there are many examples of that become sort of difficult to talk about once you start to peel back the ways in which these things are used as shields to allow shitty behavior, right? There was one question, Jared Poulter says, have I watched Maul Shadowlord? I haven't yet. I'm gonna react to it at some point, probably over the summer when I have time. I'll sit down and watch all of it, and I'll post it on Nerdy Daily. Um, I think the defining thing should be whether you would continue to be good if you survived. It's a beautiful thought. It doesn't matter to the hundreds of thousands of people who died, but it is a nice thought that Luke might have been nicer moving forward. I don't know. That's tough. That separates out redemption from becoming a better person. I agree with you to a point, but I also think drawing a line and saying once you have passed this, you cannot come back is dangerous. I don't think that's dangerous. I think that there are lines that you cannot come back from. Like genuinely, I do. I think that there are levels of harm that you can never, no amount of good actions can ever make up for. Sometimes it's about the intent of the harm, right? Like I do think that there are some things that are so extreme that you need to be locked up away from anyone else forever. And I do believe that, right? I think that, but then once the person is past that point, why would they try to be better at all? I don't think that you deserve a chance to be better. I don't think that you deserve a chance to be better once you've killed that many people. I don't care. I don't care about your opportunity to be better. Or I don't care if you feel like you should be given the chance to be better. I just don't. I think that once you've committed that level of harm, there is no reason why society should give a fuck about your feelings. And I think that you've forfeited that, right? The level of harm that you have perpetuated upon others is so great that I do not believe that anyone should have any sympathy for how you feel you should be given the chance to redeem yourself. And why should you? And look, I'm talking about extreme cases, right? I'm talking about like a serial killer who murdered 9 people. Who filleted people alive. Like people do such insane evil shit that, understand that's an opinion which is different from a factual truth. 100% all this is my opinion. I don't think that you can like be factual about any of this, right? I don't think that there's a factual truth to the concept of redemption. I can only share what my opinion of it is. Which is why I'm saying, like, I don't think that society should care. I'm not saying society doesn't care or that nobody in society cares about those people's redemption. There are people who care greatly. There are people who are trying to redeem every single person on death row. And they all have a very different opinion of that than I do, right? I can only speak from my opinion on this. I can't speak from every human opinion under the sun. That would be absurd. I just think that I don't care about your options to be redeemed once you have committed a certain level of harm. Right? Like if you're caught, if you're running a child porn ring, right? And you are responsible for, and you're like the person who's like filming kids getting, assaulted, and you're the one distributing that. I genuinely don't care about the concept of your redemption. I don't care for you to have a chance to try and be better. I just don't. We've just been extremely demonetized. Oh, no. This won't get me demonetized. No. You have to speak about it in a certain way. But I wasn't thinking about the feeling. I was thinking about the level of good in the world as a whole. Anyone who decides to be a better person is a bonus to everyone, in my opinion. I don't agree with that. I don't. I hear what you're saying, and I think there is a beautiful that is a beautiful level of empathy for you to have that I don't have. I think that person should not be allowed to interact with human beings ever again on any meaningful way. I don't think that there should be room in society for that person to ever be allowed joy again. Especially if you harm kids like that, man. I don't care. The cell could not possibly be dark enough, in my opinion. But again, there's levels to it, right? And like, I'm talking about like the most extreme people who I'm like, well, I don't know that I would trust them, right? To ever be out in the world again to make right choices. I don't know that I would trust them to... Nerdy's good opinion once lost is lost forever. Yeah. Even the crawl keeps kids out. Oh my god, DK Moon coming in with a banger. Erudite over on Twitch says, I think there's also something to be said for people with personal ties to the perpetrator being willing to overlook their impersonal atrocities to remember them in a positive light. Oh, 100%, right? It's a Pride and Prejudice quote. God, I haven't read Pride and Prejudice since college. No, I do understand what you're saying, Erudite. Like, it is the idea that they're like, well, we like Luke, so we're going to remember him well, even though he killed so many people. Nerdy playing Darcy when? Any day. If anyone has the budget and wants me to do it. I was in the middle of talking about when I like Luke. Okay, Luke. Luke's backstory. Look, I don't think Luke gets redemption. But I also think that Luke's backstory kind of doesn't help me want the gods to win, which is a whole other piece of it. But spending so much of the final book with Percy having to understand Luke and seeing the ways in which Luke's life went and how Luke ended up here, I actually really enjoyed. And I thought if Percy had been written to be a little bit more mature and a little bit older feeling, I think he could have, as a character, engaged in that better. But for the reader, I felt like the book engaged it in a very interesting way. And it led to, I think, like, the best moment, and maybe the whole series, is Percy handing Luke the knife, right? And the understanding that the prophecy is about Percy having to give up control of the quest, which is something he's never been able to do, right? Like in Battle of the Labyrinth, I was commenting about how Percy sort of feels like he's almost like mansplaining how to quest to Annabeth, and he kind of does the same thing to Talia, and he just can't help himself but involve himself and force himself on these quests, and it's a genuine moment of growth for Percy here, to be able to let go and to be able to hand over control of that. DK Moon says the evil that men do lives after them. The good is oft interred with their bones unless given redemption. That's a great quote. What's that from? Unless you just wrote that. If you just wrote that, that's a fucking banger and I'm stealing it. But you know what I mean? Like, I think that the moment with Luke and the way in which he connects with Annabeth in that moment, I really... I don't want to be negative. I'm trying to be positive here. I'm struggling. I didn't think this book was very good. I think that, like, the first 3 Percy Jackson books are great, and I think book 4 and 5 are both at best fine. That's Julius... Oh, the Shakespeare Julius Caesar. I was like, Julius Caesar said that? That's crazy. Oh my god. I was like, wait, you're quoting the actual Julius Caesar? Yes, Shakespeare. Shakespeare's a pretty good writer, y'all. He wrote a lot of dick jokes, but he was a pretty good writer. I was about to say that seems out of character. I think the one thing that kind of ruined the Luke's death, I really did not need Rick Riordan to try and make that a love triangle as well. I felt it was very weird when Luke was like, "Did you love me?" And Annabeth is like, "I was 12. You're not continuing with any of Rick Riordan's books after this, right? No, I don't think I'm going to. I think this is it for me. Unless they do grow up quite a bit and are... Unless you're like... Unless someone is like, these books get significantly more mature. I don't know. I'm not particularly interested in them. The way they play with Greek mythology is fun if you're 12. I think that reading them as a 34-year-old, I feel a little bit like No Kane Chronicles. They're so much better. I mean, I would maybe try and listen to them. I would probably not book club them until I've read them, because I don't really want to just shit on stuff. My goal isn't really to be negative on the internet. It's why I wanted to finish this, because we did the first 4, and I wanted to, like, put a cap on this and have this series done. But I also am just, I'm getting tired of disliking things online, and I kind of just want to talk about the stuff that I love. They are more mature. I don't know about significantly more mature. I don't mean I want them to be porn. I'm not looking for smut. I just mean I want them to. What's so fascinating is I think the first two books of this series are. Are you worried about how negative you're going to end up being with Soulsmith? Yes, but everyone keeps joking about getting back to Cradle, and so like I don't know. We'll see how it goes. But also everyone already knows how things went with the first book and how much I did not like the first book, so I think it'll be funny. I think Clarice will be positive, and I don't know. We're gonna see how that goes. I haven't read it yet, so I don't know. I think that the first two of these books both had really interesting like beginning and middle and ends, and I really liked the arc of them. The third one is good, and I think is maybe the best book in the series. But the third one still has the weirdness around Bianca's death and how little that hit these children who just watched someone die for the first time. But whatever. There's weirdness in these books all the way around. But I think the first three are pretty solid. And then I think book 4 and book 5 just... I think because of his over-reliance on sharing relevant information to Percy through dreams, and through, like, Percy just gets information that he hasn't earned, and through the way in which he writes Annabeth to just become so jealous and so difficult in the final two books in ways that she just isn't in the first three. I think that the series became significantly worse after book 3. I think that there's 3 solid books that I'm like, these are all very fun. I get why kids love them. I get why they're so popular. And then there's 2 books that I'm like, I don't get what he was going for, or why he gave up on the like structured storytelling that he was doing so well in the first 3 books to just do these sort of ambling adventures that are just kind of a mess structurally. Battle of the Labyrinth bounces around in weird ways and just sort of, you're never quite sure why they're doing what they're doing, partially because they don't know what they're doing. They just kind of wander and then go back to camp and then wander. And then this book is like just mostly a battle in New York City where like everyone you know from the previous book shows up. It's sort of like these Deus Ex Machina hurrah moments that leads to like a kind of easy ending. But it doesn't feel like it has much adventure to it. This book didn't have a lot of... There's nothing for Percy to figure out because his dreams just told him the information. And he got like a superpower that protects him from really being in danger throughout the whole thing. So there's not a lot of stakes in most of the fighting for Percy. And I miss the fun, wild ride of the first 3 books. I'm gonna be real. Like when I was reading the first 3 books, I felt like I couldn't put them down. Like they insist upon themselves. There was you felt like you were riding this wave with the books. And then the last 2 feel so stilted to me. And so like I could have put this down multiple times and forgotten about it, which is crazy for like the big finale of a 5-book series. And I never felt that way in the first 3 books. And I just think that he gave up a little bit on structure in favor of spectacle in a way that did, in my opinion, detract from my experience of this finale. Erudite Gaming says it's endgamey derogatory. The difference between this and Endgame for me, and I actually agree with that. It does feel endgamey. The difference is Endgame came at the end of like a 22 movie series, and no one had ever done that before. Whereas like in books, people have had big book finales like this before because it's easy to do in books, right? And it didn't feel novel. Endgame at least feels novel in its attempt to do something truly insane. And like there's just, for me, Endgame, there is a level of the experience of Endgame is partially about the fact that it exists at all. And I didn't get that here. I didn't feel impressed that this existed. I just kind of felt like most chapters I was like, who's going to show up and stop this? Oh, Clarice is here. Great. Oh, Hades and Nico are here. Okay. Oh, the party ponies are here. Like, and that the fact that you can just kind of keep naming sort of the Deus Ex Machinas feels crazy. I will also say, I think that for the size of the fighting, I don't know that Rick Riordan always does the best job describing fights as they're happening. He sort of just says, and then they fought, and then he sort of backwards describes the consequences of a fight post fight. So you have to kind of like retroactively figure out what happened. Like the Linnaeus, the satyr died, and his death is very sad. But I didn't like Linnaeus like shows up, and then we don't hear from him, and then he's dying. And it was just weird to experience his death without having like a memorable moment of him in the fighting itself. And so it's sort of like if Tony Stark was flying around the battle in Endgame and just kind of landing next to people while they died to hear what they said as they die, and then took off and like flew around and didn't like participate in the fight itself. It's a very War Records approach. Yeah. Yeah, it is. Yeah, just fascinating. Can we talk at the end? Okay. Wait. Can we talk about the gifts that they're all given at the end of the book? I get that this is YA, and I get that this is like for kids. I totally understand. Percy gets to like ask something of the gods, and they're like, "We're gonna make you a god," and he's like, "No. I want to date Annabeth, even though she is so mean to me." Percy, great ask. Fucking great ask. Recognize your fucking children. Recognize the minor gods. Let's make things a little bit better for people who have superpowers so that people with superpowers don't become villains again. Fantastic. Couldn't have asked for a better ask from Percy. It saves the whole series, in my opinion, that Percy makes it about the other kids who are mistreated at the end. And I know that's what he was always going to do, but I just want you guys to handle your shit. It's such a good point, Jonathan. Grover is made a counselor, which is fine. I don't actually have a problem with that at all. He's basically given Linnaeus' chair on the Cloven Council. That's sick. It's fun. Does he deserve it? I mean, probably. I don't know. I don't really know how important, like, intelligence is to being on the Cloven Council. It's not something that Grover has in spades, but it's fine. Annabeth is charged with rebuilding Olympus. And I'm not saying she can't do it. I'm not saying that she can't do it. Arzu, he's a moron. Grover's a fucking idiot, okay? I like him. He's cute. He's an idiot. He got Bianca killed. Let's be real clear about this. Annabeth, the book, Grover getting on the Cloven Council is like, okay, that makes sense. He's the one who saw Pan die. He's spreading the word about Pan. Annabeth has read Daedalus's notes. This is why the gods think she should be the architect of Olympus. They're like, Annabeth, you're 15 years old. You have read Daedalus's notes. Why don't you redesign Olympus? I cackled. I was listening to the audiobook. I stopped listening to the audiobook and cackled at the gym. Out loud. I guffawed. I was like, what do you mean? She's read Daedalus's notes. So, like, let her go to college first and learn how to be an architect. It would be like me being like, I read an architect's notebook. I am now going to design my house. All of my friends would be like, no, you're not. You're going to hire a professional. And I understand that the buildings will probably be built with magic. So I don't think like the math of like how they stand up matters. But I just found the gods saying like, Annabeth, you want to be an architect. You want to be an architect, don't you? You've read Daedalus's notes. You rebuild this shit. We could just do it. We could do it today. She's the only one who wants the job. I doubt that's true. I don't think they asked a single other person, Arzu. They send these kids to war. Why is architecture so bad? Because architecture is harder than war. I don't know if you know this. Architecture is actually more difficult than war. I don't think the buildings can collapse because they're made with magic. Although, no, they can collapse because Cronus destroyed them all. Monarchy approach to architecture is a very funny concept to apply seriously in a story. Oh, 1,000%. And here's the thing: it is a great moment for these books because it is her dream to build something that lasts, right? And so I'm not actually mad at it. I'm not really criticizing Rick Riordan for writing it in. For a children's story, it is the logical gift for her to be given. But it is an example of how these books never grew up from being 12-year-old stories, right? I think that Annabeth being given the architecture of Olympus is a really fantastic example of what I'm saying about this being a coming-of-age story that never comes of age. This is like the example that I mean when I say that the Percy Jackson books are not really coming-of-age stories because the kids never grow up. Because the gift that she's given at the end is the kind of gift that a 12-year-old would want. But that a 16-year-old, I think, reasonably would go, I don't know how to... like, when I was 16, I managed a movie theater. And I thought that was a reasonable job for me to have. It one-ups her delusion somehow. Yes, Erda. This is honestly more crazy than her dream of rebuilding Manhattan. Yes, Erda came in. It is absolutely more crazy than her dream of building Manhattan. Because it's just, it is... I see people online sometimes being like, I don't understand why people... And look, I'm about to mention Harry Potter. Fuck J.K. Rowling. I don't want more Harry Potter shit. I don't. I'm not going to watch a TV show. I'm not trying to defend J.K. Rowling. But... I'm just bringing this up because a lot of times I see the two series compared to one another. And people say, like, I don't understand why people like Harry Potter when Percy Jackson is right there and it's kind of the same thing. And I just fundamentally disagree with that. As much as I don't fuck with Harry Potter, those books grow up with those kids. Harry in book 1 is an 11-year-old and Harry in book 7 is a 17, 18-year-old. And like the in the epilogue, they'll have like jobs, like they have real like magical world jobs, and the books age with them and they grow up with them, which I think is why my generation was so upset, or was so obsessed. Sorry, not upset, obsessed with Harry Potter, because it felt like you could grow up with those kids and they would feel like the age that the book tells you they're at throughout. And the maturity of the writing and the maturity of the concepts they're dealing with and the way in which they handle war grows up with those kids. So when people are dying in book 7, it feels so real. When Sirius Black dies, it feels so real to them. The grief in those books feels real. And it is much easier to be obsessed with that world because it is tangible. Percy Jackson does not do that, right? Percy Jackson does not grow with its kids. It keeps telling you the kids get older, but they are responding to their world in the exact same way, even in the writing. Like, the jokes that Percy tells across this series of books don't grow with him. He doesn't get... he never finds different humor. And I get that it's probably just Rick Riordan's sense of humor, right? But Percy doesn't get kind of older with the novels. And so when kids start to die in these books, the grief doesn't actually feel that real, right? It feels childish and like it almost has like a dreamlike quality, as if the mist helps them forget the grief that should be hanging over them. And 16-year-old Percy, at the end of this book, when countless demigods are dead on the streets of New York down below, and hundreds of thousands of people have been destroyed by Typhon crossing the United States, and the rampant death and destruction of the end of this book happens, there's no mention of it. There's no weight given to it. Percy's just fine. He goes to camp. Like, the end of this book, Percy Jackson goes to summer camp. And I will say, the fucking final line of this book is fantastic. It is so good. When he's leaving camp, and for the first time, he didn't look back. 10 out of 10, no notes. Rick Riordan could not have written a better finale line to the series. Genuinely. You'll never hear me speak a bad word about it. I think it is like, it's a perfect line. And it's so simple, but it conveys so much, right? Just an absolute metric buttload of character and whatnot in this book. I love it. Genuinely. It might be the greatest line Rick Riordan ever writes in his life. And it's such a simple idea. But it's just, God, what a fucking banger, right? I got chills. I didn't like the book that much, and I got chills at how good the final line is. Genuinely. But these books don't grow up with them. And I think part of that is also the certainty in the world of Rick Riordan's books versus Harry Potter. They don't grapple with existential questions like afterlife. Well, yeah, I guess the fact that they can go visit their friends in Elysium doesn't make it... Like, they could go see Beckendorf tomorrow. But the people online who compare Percy Jackson and Harry Potter, they are not playing the same game at all. And I think that the expectation that people would become as obsessed with this world when it's as shallow and it's just shallow. Like, Rick Riordan's version of New York is shallow. And I know that people love it, and I'm not trying to be mean. This is just my opinion. But this series will never be as beloved as something like a Harry Potter or a Lord of the Rings or a Stormlight Archive or something like that, because it just isn't. It isn't that deep. This is kids. These are kids' books, and they pretend to get older, but they don't. It's a fugazi. You know what I mean? And that is... It is unfortunate. It's not what I expected at the beginning of this. When I started reading these, I was excited to watch Percy kind of grow up to be 16 and do these things. And I did not... I think part of the reason why I'm disappointed is I didn't get the experience I wanted out of this, but I'm 34, and this shouldn't be about me. You know what I mean? I think that if you're 12 years old, this probably fucks so hard. If I had read this when I was 12, I think I would be deeply nostalgic for it today in a way that, like, I just can't artificially create at 34. I think you would like Heroes of Olympus, but it probably won't satisfy the need you feel for improvement, not fully. I might read it one day. I don't know that I would book club it. I also, hey, Nibbin, what's up? I honestly don't think I'll ever do a solo book club again. I think that this podcast is two people. I think that, like, trying to do the solo stuff because there's more books I want to read, I think I need to just start reading books and maybe doing, like 10-minute book review videos and not book clubbing by myself. And just, like, I think the podcast is me and Clarus, and doing it without her, I don't know. I don't think... I've tried it. I've tried to make it work, and I just don't think I'm going to do it anymore. Marius says, I wish Rick Riordan would do more Kane Chronicles because I was introduced to him by Percy Jackson, but I liked his other one that is not the first ones. Yeah, I've heard Arzu was saying the Kane Chronicles is better. I've heard Heroes of Olympus is interesting. They introduced the, like, Roman gods, which makes no sense to me because the Roman gods and the Greek gods are the same gods. So I'm curious how that works. Like, aren't Ares and Jupiter the same person? Spoilers, can't tell you? All right. That's the point? What do you mean that's the point, Arzu? That Kane Chronicles is better? Can I say how he does? My son read these a few years ago, enjoyed it, and burned through all the rest of Rick's book, but he's 14 now. Oh, Jupiter is Zeus. Jupiter is Zeus. Ares is Mars. Yeah, sorry. That's right. No, the gods being the same. Is part of the major conflict is just that they have different names? That sounds okay, I'm not reading these books. That sounds so stupid. That this is immediately so judgmental of me, but the fact that the Roman and the Greek gods have different names is the major conflict of a book series. Deeply uninteresting to me. I mean, we just did this. Are there, like, Roman kids? Well, now I'm curious. Fuck. It's actually fascinating. All right. The best thing is that you get 7 different POVs. Oh my god. Wait, some of them Roman? Wait, so there are Roman children? Are they actually in Rome ever? Or are we just calling them the Roman kids and the Greek kids, even though they're all blonde children in New York City? It is my favorite thing about this book that everyone is, like, incredibly blonde. Except, I guess, Grover, but... 7, but book 1 has 3 different POVs. Okay. The series does go to Rome at one point? Thank God. This series needs some international travel. I also just want a book where Percy has to, like, get a job and, like, make money and survive. Oh, something I love about this book that I didn't bring up earlier. Something I love about this book. Percy Jackson talks about Paul Blofeld as his parent in a way that I thought was a really good representation of step-parents. I really, really appreciated the way in which Percy... the language about Paul Blofeld at this point, because he's been dating Percy's mom for what, like a year and a half at this point, I think. And I think that there's just something about the casual way in which Percy engages with Paul being his parent now as being just a really positive message for kids who have step parents, to engage with them. Just like my stepdad is my father. You know what I mean? Like I am more the man I am today because of my stepdad, Kim, than I am my actual dad. And, you know, it just, as someone who has a stepfather who and you know what, my dad's kind of a narcissist like Poseidon, if I'm being completely honest. Maybe I do relate with Percy Jackson quite a bit because of that. Anyway, my mom is the best, and my stepdad fucking rocks. And as someone who has this dynamic, I felt very seen by the casual way Percy Jackson's like, oh no, my parents are downstairs. My parents are in the car. My parents are in danger. Paul Blofeld fucking comes out with a sword, kills a fucking creature. Which does get into one thing about the monsters in this book. I will say the way in which... I was a little disappointed the way in which the, like, big monsters that had been so scary for multiple books did sort of feel like fodder in these fights. There were a couple of ones that stood out, but for the most part, we're fighting, like, minotaurs and shit, and the monsters weren't very memorable in a lot of the combat. And part of it is that the combat isn't overly explained. It's not very visualized. It sort of is just, like, telling us that combat is happening. But I do wish that... we've gotten a little bit more variety in the fights. Although Clarice killing the dragon was pretty cool. The Heroes series engages more accurately with the idea of gods and the myth being shaped by shifts in civilization and dominant culture. Oh God, I don't know that I want to read Rick Riordan writing about that. I already think, let's be real, I already think the America is the seed of the West is kind of hilarious. I don't know if I want to keep going, man. I don't know. I didn't like the last 2 books in the series as much as I wanted to. I'll be real. And I have been real. There's multiple hours of me talking about it. I think that the first 3 books in this promised ending that I don't think he delivered on. And that's fine. It happens. You can't always get what you want in this life. Next week we're going to be reading The Expanse though, and I'm not worried about liking that because god damn does James S.A. Corey know how to write a book. I'll say I wasn't a fan of book 6. Is that the first Heroes of Olympus book? Wait, book 6 of which series? What is book 6, 9 Bishop? I don't know. You're gonna miss that book club? Blue, no, we're doing it for you. You're the only reason we do The Expanse. God, I am caffeinated right now. Yeah, this has been an interesting ride, y'all. This has been an interesting ride. I'm sorry I'm not continuing for the people who do want me to. I don't know that there's anyone who actually wants me to, which is understandable. I'll be driving to Minnesota during book club. I'll probably put up so I can listen, but I won't be able to participate. I'm sorry, Blue. I'm so excited because it is the one season of The Expanse that I did not like as much as the rest of the show. And so I'm so excited to see how I feel about the adaptation process. Like, is this the one book in the series I don't like too? Or not that I didn't dislike the 4th season. I just found it more frustrating than other parts of it. I didn't think it was as good as other parts. But yeah. Yeah. Are you going to do a Strength of the Few book club? I think we're going to try after the summer. I think this is the best way to put my thoughts on book 4. I didn't do a reread to try and find chapters that would be good reactions. That's fair. That is fair. Embrace says, I'm glad I read these. I might get them for my nephew when he's a bit older. Oh, I got them for my nephew. I did. My nephew is 7. And he really liked it. The first one. Or 8? So no, like I do think, here's the thing. I think that these are fine for kids. I wish that it treated women a little bit better. Like ultimately, like my biggest concern with giving this to young boys is the way that I think it uses pretty misogynistic language a lot. And I think the way that it treats female characters is pretty, like, it feels like 2005. I'll be honest. I wish that I wish the women were, especially Annabeth. Annabeth fucking sucks in the last 2 books. It's crazy because she's such a great character in the first 3 books. And she just is, Rick Riordan just doesn't know how to write about her in the last 2 books, except in terms of how she feels about boys. And Luke's death being like, Annabeth, did you love me? And she's like, no, I was 12 years old. You were 15. What the fuck is wrong with you? Like, I genuinely hated that line so much. I love that she said no. And that Luke was like, yeah, okay, that makes sense. But like, at what point would she have loved you, Luke? When she was 11? Like, what are we doing? What? He's like, what? In that scene, he's like 20, almost 20. He's 19, 20 years old. And he's like, when you were 11 years old, did you want to date me? It's like, what are we doing? What? And maybe I missed something in that. But it felt like such an insane piece of writing that came out of nowhere. It never really felt like they had a romantic relationship at all, because she's like 4 or 5 years, because he's what, 12 when she's 8, right? So he's at least 4 years older than her, maybe 5, depending on when their birthdays fall. And I just found it, I just hated it. Or does she turn 16 before Percy? He might be like 20, 21 in this final book. Did you, Annabeth, did you love me? No. Why? What? Did you love me? You fucking weirdo? Like, I don't know. I wish that his ending had been ever so slightly different. She seemed to have a bit of a crush on him in the first book, but lots of kids have crushes on people older than them. Oh, no. I don't have a problem at all with a 12-year-old having a crush on a 16-year-old, right? I think that is completely normal. I just find it weird for him to ask if she loved him when he's 21 and she's 16. Or 20 and 16. I think that's what's weird. Her having a crush on him is not weird. Him having a crush on her or thinking that there's any romantic thing between them is very weird. And uncomfortable. And like groomy. In a way that I don't think is intentional. I think it's supposed to be sweet. It just didn't come across as sweet to me because he's been her villain. He's been a villain in her life since she was like 12. Oh my god, Animal Friend, we're just talking. I'm literally responding to things that the fucking chat is saying. It's a fucking live stream. I didn't write my thoughts out and say them in order. We're just chatting. Cringe is an adult, but so true from a kid's perspective. From Annabeth's perspective, 100%. From Luke's, no. You know what I mean? Like, that is the line for me. If you're a 12-year-old and you have a crush on a 16-year-old, that's fine. If you're a 16-year-old and you have a crush on a 12-year-old, that's not fine. You know what I mean? Like, it is actually not okay for a 16-year-old to be attracted to a 12-year-old. That's fucking weird. Book club isn't scripted. My illusions are shattered. This show could not be more casual. Like the idea that I have no notes. This just says in person. That's it. I have no notes. I'm just chatting. This couldn't be a less like structured review of a thing ever. If you, animal friend, if there's something you want me to talk about, bring it up in the chat and we'll chat. That's how this has worked for the last hour. He's more of a hero figure to her. He was the one who found her alone in an alley as a child. I agree with that completely. The thing I'm saying is I don't understand why he asks her if she loves him. Like, I don't know what he wants her answer to be there, is I guess what I'm saying, Jonathan O'Neill. Right? I don't know what answer he wants back. I think it reads really well, but the fact that Annabeth was the only person there he ever genuinely cared about in any way informs it a little. I understand that. I do, from that perspective, Erudite, I wish Talia had been there. I wish Talia mattered more. Talia really matters for a book, and then she is... this series really lets go of her really fast, hey? She's, like, in this book, like, fighting and stuff, but I would have loved more from Talia in this book. Talia took herself off the board. I wasn't arguing with you or opposing your view. I think that's the only love she had for him, though. Oh, I agree with that. And I do think she loved him as a brother. And so, I guess maybe that's what he was asking. Like, did you love me as a brother? But it just... Because Rick Riordan writes it as, like, another jealousy moment where she, like, looks at Percy and Percy feels his, like, heart clench... Yeah, Rick Riordan makes it about romance. That's what it is. It's not the line. I think that even if he had been like, did you love me? And Annabeth had like knelt down and took his hand and been like, we were family, Luke. Of course I loved you. I still love you. It wouldn't have been weird. It would have been a beautiful moment of her being like, I love you. I love you with my whole heart. And I'm so sorry that I couldn't save you from your bad decisions, right? I think there's a version of it that's beautiful. It's the fact that, like, I wish I had the book in front of me, but it's downstairs. It's the fact that the line is like, did you love me? And then Percy's like, my heart clenched. Oh my God, this is how Annabeth felt when I talk about Rachel Dare. And she's like, no. That makes it romantic in a way that I just don't think it should be. Like, I genuinely think the way it should be written is Luke goes, Annabeth, did you love me? And she kneels down and takes his hand and is like, we said on that day in that safe room that we would be family. I will always love you, Luke. There's no romance in that. There's nothing weird about it. The age gap stuff doesn't come up. It's just this like beautiful moment between them and an acknowledgement that there's a genuine love that has carried through the series for them. And it gets ruined as a moment because it becomes about Percy's like feelings and his like heart clenching. But like there's a world where she can say that she loves him in a way that isn't weird, and actually I think would be like the better moment, right? Like would be the more like heartbreaking moment of her just being like, I still love you. Loved? No. I love you, and I will always love you. You are my family. We decided that day that we were family, and despite all of the decisions that you made, we are family. There's so many different ways to word that line, and it would be a fucking banger. But it just comes down to the, like, every woman's interaction with everyone has to be about jealousy in these books, and it does kind of, like, kill it. Percy's heart clenching would even work if he got expanded into pity or sympathy or whatever. Yeah, if Percy was feeling something about Luke, 100% erudite. And if Annabeth didn't look at Percy for his reaction. Yeah, exactly. Like, the book makes it about romance in a way that it just, as a moment, doesn't need to be, because she was 12 and he was 16. And it, like... There's so many kinds of love. Like, the Greeks are the best at naming love. The Greeks have so many fucking words for love. Agape? Right? Isn't that familial love is agape? I wish that it was from Annabeth's POV than Percy. Oh, Marius, you're speaking my fucking language now. You make that the first scene from, you tell the whole thing from Percy's POV, and then Percy hands over the knife. He hands the knife to Luke, right? And then from that moment on, never Percy's POV again. From the moment Percy hands over the knife and gives up being the leader of the quest, it's Annabeth's POV until the end of the book. Oh, we'd be cooking with fucking gas. And at the end, you don't even have to change the final line, because Annabeth watches Percy leave the camp, and Annabeth is the one who notices that for the first time he doesn't look back. You don't have to change anything about any of the like end of the book. You just make from the moment Percy gives up the knife until the end of the book, it's Annabeth's POV. That would have been chef's kiss. Because then we would get her getting to say goodbye to Luke. Percy doesn't really care about Luke that much. You know what I mean? Like, they spent one summer kind of training together, but he doesn't have the relationship with Luke that Annabeth has, and I don't know. Ultimately, I'm glad I read them. I'm glad I know the story of these now. I do understand more philia is brotherly love. What's familial love? I know they've got a word for it. Agape is pure love. Percy, I think, cares about Luke in a sense that Luke is in the position Percy thought he would be in. Yeah, that's true. Yeah. He sees a lot of himself in Luke and like who he doesn't want to become, right? I'm glad I read them. I do understand more now why they're changing so much in the TV show. When we watched season 2, I was confused. It felt like they were changing things for no reason. I think that having read the final 2 books, the final 2 books do a lot of random shit that isn't very foreshadowed and that isn't, in my opinion, very good for especially for a TV show. And I think they're gonna have to change a lot, especially like Talia. Talia just kind of is treated as being very important and then disappears. Like, I think there's going to be a lot of I think there's a lot of ways in which the TV show is going to have to adapt this to make Annabeth seem way less like whiny and weird in the second half. What's up, Sin Sid? Welcome in. I think that the people who love the books and want a very faithful adaptation are going to be disappointed. Partially because, can we talk about this for a second? There's no fucking way that TV show can afford to do the final book. There is not a world, unless they get an absolutely metric buttload of money. How could you possibly do the final book on that on the TV show budget that season 2 had? They didn't have lights for night scenes. They didn't have fucking Talia and Zeus have the most important conversation in season 2 in the dark. They didn't have lights. How are they gonna fucking do the Battle of New York City in the TV? How are they gonna do the giant pig that crashes into Grand Central Station? Like, there's just no way. And honestly, this book would be a bad TV show. It's like, let's just be let's be real. It would be like 1 episode to go get the Curse of Achilles, and then 7 episodes of just fighting in different parts of Manhattan at night. Yeah, Hippo Blue, at night. Oh, right, because Cronus' army can only attack at night because they're more powerful at night. And so it's just, it's 7 episodes of them fighting in the dark. It's just 7 hours of children swinging swords in the dark. And they're like, there was a Minotaur there. You couldn't see it because it was nighttime, and we're using real lighting, so... But, like, actually, like, what would the episode breakdown be? I guess oh, no, okay, so let's actually try and think this out. Episode 1, right, is attacking the cruise ship, right? And it ends with Nico... Episode 1 of season 5 would be attacking the cruise ship, ends with Nico being like, I have a plan. Episode 2, we go to hell. We fight... we break... maybe episode 2 ends with Percy. So episode 2, we do the Oracle stuff at the house. Right? We meet May, Castellan. We go to hell. End of episode 2... we're put in prison by Hades. Episode 3, we break out of prison. get the Curse of Achilles, and we fight off Hades' army, and we go back to camp. Episode 4 is rallying everybody to get ready to go to New York. The fighting with Clarice about stuff. It's mostly just arguing about the battle in New York. And at the end of episode 4, we get in the vans, and the end of episode 4, all of the vans are driving to New York City. And then there's 4 episodes where we fight New York City. It would be half the season. Wheel of Time season 1 graphics. I mean, yeah, it's crazy. But yeah, I think that like episode 5. I mean, they haven't established the party ponies, so I guess the party ponies are just cut. Yeah, it would be essentially like a 4-hour chunk of battle. With probably like the entire final episode being like Kronos probably gets taken out in episode 7. It's probably 3 episodes of battle. Kronos gets taken out in episode 7. And then episode 8 is just fully like denouement, a little bit of like time with the kids at summer camp, and then like a lot of Percy Annabeth at the summer camp at the end, right? You get like just like to enjoy the summer with them, maybe. So maybe it's just 3 episodes of battle. You cut the party ponies. You cut it down to mostly like... You cut it down to 3 important fights, right? You would do the Central Park fight. You would do Central Park. You would do the battle with the dragon where Clarice shows up in episode 6. And then episode 7 is Olympus. The fight on Olympus. Because then if you do the like bridges and tunnels at the beginning of episode 5, but Percy goes to Central Park, you're just fighting in trees with like CGI buildings over top. That would probably be a little bit cheaper. The dragon fight in episode 6 is probably the most expensive fight in the season, where that's the only one that you actually do on like a New York City street. You have Clarice on 5th Avenue in like a CGI 5th Avenue fighting a dragon. And then episode 7 takes place in a CGI room, right? Where they're just in the god's chamber. Arzu says they will have made so many of their own storylines by then that sticking to this book just would not happen. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if Talia's fucking on Kronos' side by this fight, based on how the end of season 2 went, right? Like, why would Talia ever fight on the side of the gods in the show? I'm not gonna lie. I do think that book 2 is better than season 2. Genuinely, like I think that the Sea of Storms, or Sea of Monsters, sorry, is a better book than season 2 of Percy Jackson is a TV show. But I think the TV show can improve upon the last 2 books. Genuinely, I just don't think they have the money to. I ultimately think that like the biggest problem the show is going to have is that they're just not going to have the money to do any of this. They didn't have the money to do the Hydra in season 2. They didn't have the money to do they didn't have the money to do so much. Powers of the show, you have 2 episodes for battle, make it fit. No, I think they'll do 3. I think it'll be 5, 6, and 7. Because I think Central Park, like, I think the people running the show will be like, here's the deal. Episode 5 is going to be really cheap. We're going to spend some time with Morpheus and the Sleep God and Grover in Central Park. It's just going to be trees. We can film that anywhere and pretend it's Central Park. They won't film in actual Central Park because it's so expensive. But doing an entire episode of the battle in Central Park just really makes production of it so simple. CGI is expensive, so it's going to be mostly just demigods like it was at the end of season 2. And it's just going to be a bunch of kids hitting each other with sticks in like fake Central Park. The only one that'll have a monster will be the dragon. There will be shots from very far away of monsters at the bridges and tunnels fighting with demigods. Percy will fly around on... Yeah, he'll fly around on Blackjack, and you'll see the like CGI creature fights at the edges of the city where people are holding bridges and holding tunnels, and then he'll go to Central Park and he'll fight other kids. And like the fight with Prometheus will be in the Central Park episode. it's just going to be a really tall dude. It'll probably be another wrestler. Maybe they get like, I don't know, the Big Show or the Undertaker. No, they're old, not old, but like they're like retired. They'll get someone like Roman Reigns or Cody Rhodes, or some modern wrestler, John Cena, someone like that will play Prometheus. That way it's just a big dude fighting Percy. Like, that's cheap, right? You could do that pretty easily, and then you save on money. God, and this is how it happens, right? This is how the stuff that people love getting adapted becomes the stuff that we don't love. Honestly, right? Because it's these conversations that they're having in those rooms of like, how do we afford this? And then we blame them for ruining it, when it really just comes down to like nickels and dimes. How can we afford to make this? Because no, unless you had a Marvel movie budget to make a 2.5 hour The Last Olympian film, which Disney has the money, but it would never make the money back, so there'd be no point for them to do it. How would you do this? It's so crazy. There's like 50 centaurs, or there's some crazy number of centaurs from across the entirety of the United States of America at one point. It's like 200 centaurs or something, or I can't remember. There's centaurs from everywhere. There's dragons. There's a giant flying pig. There's multiple Pegasuses. There's multiple water spirits. Poseidon consumes... Oh, Typhon, cut. Typhon never happens. Poseidon shows up and like consumes Typhon into the ocean. Definitely cut. Tyson is just with them the whole time. In season 3, Tyson will have something to make the eye cheaper as well. But yeah, the Poseidon takes out Typhon. That's cut. Like, DK Moon says Hope DCC adaptation is pretty good. The thing about DCC that makes it a little bit easier than this show is it's like the most it's not old, right? Percy Jackson is trying to make money off of nostalgia by making a children's show for adults who loved a children's book when they were kids. And that is a tough group of people to get a lot of money out of. Percy Jackson hasn't been a hit in a long time. Dungeon Crawl Carl is arguably the biggest book series in the world right now. If you go to any Barnes & Noble in Canada, there are signs for it in the window. They're running we don't have Barnes & Noble, but we have Chapters in Indigo. I say Barnes & Noble because most of the people watch this are American. I want you to understand what I'm talking about. There are signs in the window being like, hey, if you buy we'll give you 20% off if you buy all of the DCC books as a bundle. It is the biggest thing in the world right now. Whereas Percy Jackson was pretty big 15 years ago. You know what I mean? And it's just tough to make the money that way. Have you read the whole saga of Rick Riordan trying to make Percy Jackson movie not suck? No, but I know he doesn't like the movie, right? I'm not gonna lie. I like the first movie just fine. I think that I enjoyed the first movie. I enjoyed it when it came out. I haven't seen it since. But I thought the first one was fun. I thought the first one, based on what I remember, the first one was fun in a way that the TV show isn't. And I think the first one got the vibe of the books right, even though it's more inaccurate to the books. But I think the vibe of the first movie is closer to the vibe of the books than the show gets. I think the second movie was terrible. I remember it being awful. But the first movie I remember enjoying. I'm calling it now. The final battle is just going to be like 6 people total on screen. No, they managed to get like 30 kids on screen at the end of season 2. In armor that didn't really fit all that well. But they had like 30 kids on screen in season 2. They'll have a little bit more than that. There'll be more adults, I think is what it'll be. Because that'll be cheaper than having a bunch of kids. So Percy, by then, fucking Walker is going to be fucking 6'5". Dude's growing like a motherfucker. He's going to fight a bunch of adults. It'll be fun. If it happens. I don't see them getting past season 3, to be honest. Maybe they do. I just think that with the economic realities of where things are going, and I think it's going to be really tough for... I don't know. I'm anticipating season 3 will be the end of the show, but that's based on the viewership for season 2 being so much lower than season 1. DCC being a bit unhinged makes it easier to make it on a lower budget. We just get Donut to blame the AI for bad special effects. Yeah, and I think that the fun thing about Donut is that, like, Donut is I was listening to Seth MacFarlane talk about Ted and the show Ted and how expensive Ted is, but Donut is just so much easier to have a physical prop attached to Carl's shoulder. Like, I think that Donut is going to just live on Carl's shoulder for so much of that show. And we're just going to get used to the visual being the two of them like this. And so many shots are going to be them talking to each other like this. Because that saves so much money where Ted walks around on his own mostly in that show, which just is a whole different rig. But I think there will be a physical thing on Carl's shoulder, and they're only going to have to do his Donut's mouth mostly. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what that show does. If we have time to toss anything, it's that no matter how good season 3 of a show is, there will be issues. Well, but the problem is season 3 was too late for Wheel of Time to get good, Erudite, right? Like, and I agree with all the people that are like, yeah, but they found their stride in season 3. It's like, yeah, they did. Season 3 is so much better than the first 2 seasons. And it ends on a banger episode. But they have just lost too much audience by then. And it's the same problem Percy Jackson's going to have. Is like, even if season 3 is incredible, I do think that the way that Percy Jackson fans talk about the show online is the death knell of the show. Because even people who are like, Percy Jackson books are my childhood, complain about the show constantly and aren't that interested in it. And in that, like, from that perspective, what is the incentive for Disney to keep the show going if the fans of the books are also kind of like, I don't know, they're not really doing what I want until she has her baby to ride. Oh yeah, no, I'm talking about season 1 only, Jonathan. Mongo is a problem. Mongo is going to spend a lot of time in the Pokeball. Mongo will be in 2 episodes each season. And that's about it. But honestly, like, I'll be really happy if DCC just has a really solid first season. Here's the thing. I don't need an adaptation of DCC. The books are basically perfect. And Jeff Hayes' performance in the audiobooks is so good. I don't know. I'm good. Like, I feel fed. Mongo is appalled. I know Mongo is appalled, but Mongo is expensive. Mongo ain't cheap. Mongo is allowed to be appalled. Mongo is a pricey little bitch. I wish more adaptations with the animation route. Oh, dude, I would give anything for, like, Studio Trigger to do the DCC anime. Give me Dungeon Crawler Carl in the Cyberpunk Edgerunners anime style. I would come. I would just, our reactions would have to be censored from the waist down. I would lose my mind. I just popped in, so I don't know if you already talked about this, but do you think the low-key misogyny continued in this book, and if so, how? Oh, Algeron, I talked about it. Trust me. I do think the low-key misogyny continues in this book. I think it's ultimately, like, the reason why it's the biggest reason why I'm not that interested in continuing reading Rick Riordan's series, is I don't like the way he treats women. And I don't like the way he not treats women. I'm sure as a person I treats women in his books. I'm not making any statements about how he treats women in his life. I'm sure he's a very nice guy, and I don't think any of the misogyny in these books is intentional. I do actually think it is very accidental. I don't like the way he handles female characters, yeah. And I think that there's a lot of unintentional but deeply ingrained misogyny in the entirety of Percy Jackson, and I don't know. It's in the way he describes female characters, particularly elderly female characters. He's really sweet to Sally. Like, Sally, Percy's mom, is such a sweet character, but I think in a very unfortunate way he captures the mind of a 2000s teenage boy. I agree with that. But I do think it is detrimental to the way that I view the world, and it's a detriment to my desire to read more of his writing. I think that women can be jealous. I'm not saying women can't be jealous or can't be rude or can't be gruff, or it is just the consistency with the way he attributes that to all of these women that I find to be the misogyny part, right? Like, if the women were complex and contained multitudes, their rougher parts wouldn't be as, like, wouldn't feel as sort of grifty as this book makes them feel. But this book paints Percy as a character who mostly sees negatives in women and is mostly judgmental of the women he sees. And I don't know. I don't like Percy's in the way he views women and the way that Percy's inner life talks about women. And like the thing is, like, the last Olympian book came out in 2009. Okay, that's actually earlier than I thought. So yeah, like this is very early 2000s, and I think that young boys would get the wrong lesson from this book, genuinely. Have I listened to the sound booth version yet of Percy Jackson? No, I have not, Marius. Is it better than the audiobook? I thought the audiobook I haven't talked about it much. I think the audiobook narrator did a pretty banging job. I don't know that I know what his name is off the top of my head right now. Can I find it on the Wikipedia page? No, I don't think it's here. We should be saying who does the audiobooks on the Wikipedia pages, I think. I think the narrator of the audiobook does a pretty banging job, and I think that he did a good job across the whole series. No, DCC. Oh, the DCC sound booth. No, I've only listened to the Jeff Hayes version. I didn't know there was another version. I don't know that I would want to do the sound booth version until I finish the book the first time. Maybe after book 8 I'll do the sound booth versions. Especially with how fast manga grows. That's not one prop, that's multiple. They'd have to stop the growth. Yeah, I think manga will grow in the Pokeball really quickly and then be full size Emberize real fast. Did you see that Epic will get an animation? Yes. I think that Epic getting an animation is the best thing possible. I know they were trying to do a stage show for a while, and I think that would have been a disaster financially, especially in the market for like theater right now is just really, really awful. I think that them getting an animated movie is incredible for Jorge. Like, what a massive accomplishment of work that he did. Really, really, really cool. Jesse Bernstein, yeah. Jesse Bernstein did a great job in these audiobooks. Philogiston says, I feel like several people highlight misogyny, but lots of people don't talk about misandry that exists in several stories. Philogiston, if you want to talk about the misandry that you see in the Percy Jackson series, please bring it up. If there's misandry in Percy Jackson, please drop it in the chat. I would love to talk about it with you. I don't think that this series has a lot of misandry in it, personally. I think it would be hard to find it, since almost every main character is a white man, with an incredible amount of. It's mostly superpowers and gods who are white men. So I think it would be hard to say that this series is a misinterest. It's mostly only negative in the way that it describes women. There's no female main character who isn't described as being incredibly jealous at one point or another. So sure, if you have an example in these 5 books that you want to bring up as misandry, go ahead. I will happily talk about it with you. But I don't know, but I think you might be barking up the wrong tree with this particular series. I wouldn't have manga appear till 3rd season. If the show is making money, then spend the manga money. No, I wouldn't change anything. 3rd season is going to be 3rd floor, right? I think they have to introduce Mongo when they can. I think they just put him in a Pokeball. I think that they introduce Mongo. It's a very funny scene where Mongo is running around destroying things. And then they get the Pokeball almost immediately. They throw Mongo in the Pokeball. A few episodes later, Donut lets Mongo out of the Pokeball and is like, I've been practicing in a safe space with him, and look at how well behaved he is. Good boy, Mongo. Mongo like bites the head off something that it's not, immediately bites the head off something he's not supposed to. She's like, oh, still some more training to go. And then in like season 3, Mongo is around more. I do think we'll see Mongo when he's introduced in the book. He'll be in for like 2 scenes over the course of the first 2 seasons just to be present. Jeff Hayes is the founder of Sound Booth. He does a more produced version of DCC that is bigger cast and does more sound effects. I haven't listened to it. I'll have to check that out. I think that sounds fantastic. Erudite says, I would find some misandry from Rick Riordan refreshing, to be honest. Deluxe Frog says, why are you reading Percy Jackson? Nostalgia reasons. I've never read it before, so no, I have no nostalgia for this. I won't have nostalgia for this. I didn't like the last 2 books very much, I'll be honest. So I have a book club, Deluxe Frog, called the Nerdy Wordy Book Club. We've been reading fantasy books on this channel for over 4 years now, doing this podcast. We've done hundreds of episodes, literally hundreds of episodes, which is crazy. And so Percy Jackson was the latest series that I've been covering since the beginning of the year, and I've been giving my thoughts on it. So that's why. Every time you say Mongo, I think of the character from Blazing Saddles. Very different Mongo. Very different Mongo. What is the name of the book you're now talking about now, DCC? Dungeon Crawler Carl. It's a series of books. Dungeon Crawler Carl is a sci-fi modern fantasy book series by Matt Dinniman. If you are going to Gen Con, my friend Taylor is actually playing... This is crazy, okay? They are playing the Dungeon Crawler Carl TTRPG on stage at Gen Con with Matt Dinniman as a player and with Jeff Hayes as a player. My friend Taylor's fucking in it. One of the McElroys in it. I can't tell the McElroys apart, but one of the McElroys is in it. The craziest stage show ever. I'm so jealous of my friend Taylor. She's going to have such a blast. It's such a cool experience. I cannot wait to see Matt Dinniman play the DCC TTRPG live. Although, will there be spoilers? I might not be able to go to that panel because I won't be caught up by then. No, I imagine they'll make it spoiler free because they'll know that it's an opportunity to get people into the books. We're just talking about Dungeon Crawler Carl now. Y'all, let's end book club. We're gonna call it here. Ultimately, I think that good for Rick Riordan. He made a shit ton of money, and a bunch of people call him Uncle Rick. For me, 3 really, really solid books, 2 less solid books, but an enjoyable few months of reading, and I'm glad that I have now read them. I might read the other ones in the future. I might review them. I probably won't book club them. But has this TTRPG released, or is this like a beta play? It is currently on Backer Kit. So if you want to sign up for it, you can currently sign up for the Backer Kit for the DCC TTRPG, but it is not yet out. Although I know people have seen it. Apparently it's very good. But I haven't seen it yet or played it. So hopefully soon. Y'all, thank you so much for a great book club. My high of this book has to be I think it is... I was going to say my high for this book is... I'm going to give it to Clarice killing the dragon. That moment fucked. And then, Selena dying was, emotional. The last line. Oh, yeah, the high's the last line. No, that's actually a really good point, Jared Poulter. The high is the last line. And for the first time I didn't look back. It's got to be the high. My low of this book is just sort of the fact that it didn't hold together for me. You know. If you like the video, subscribe to the channel. If you don't, leave the comments down below because the algorithm goddess hungry. We must feed her. Algorithm goddess this episode is... Oh boy, I guess we'll give it to Annabeth Chase. If you want to follow me on the internet, you can. I'm at nerdynightly. Still not doing any smut corner on these books because they are still all children. Even though Luke was like, do you love me? And Bryce says I backed it for far too much money the other day. I wasn't supposed to be back, I think, this year. But somehow, I can't believe how much money I put into Cyberpunk TCG, so I get it. Percy saying God's to pay child support. All right, y'all. Thank you so much for a great book club. I will see you all next week for The Expanse Book 4. I'm going to go watch the first ever professional women's basketball game in Toronto tonight. So if you're going to the Toronto Tempo game, say hi. Do something nerdy tonight. Bye. Thank you, Mike.